I know what you're thinking, and no, it wasn't Mephisto. It was Jared Leto. Why do people dislike Megami? At first, I didn't get it. I was an anime only, and even when I caught up, it was around the 3-month break Gege had around the Zenin Massacre, so for all intents and purposes, Megami was, I don't know, okay? He keeps going on and on about how being a sorcerer is the opposite of being a hero, but his inner conscience, who just so happens to be the sister he wants so desperately to do right by, is constantly making him become that hero. The story keeps telling him to depart from that, at least little by little. Him saving Yuji does unfortunately lead to the massacre by Sukuna and the stealing of Gojo. His rigid thinking keeps him from accepting his individual potential. And even though a sorcerer is supposed to keep his emotions and heart stable, even in the most traumatic circumstances, him wavering is what allows Sukuna to take over his body. Megami is a human being and yet does not want to be. Sorcerers are con artists, Reggie tells him. That's a great line because Megami for so long is the only character with a sense of honesty. I think that's why people think he's lame, which he is, don't get me wrong. If Sasuke was all black and brooding and had none of the richness that came from the Uchiha subplot, he too would be relegated to the role of getting up just to put his shoes back on. Which is sad because this con artist facade inside of a deeply sensitive soul is done well 3 other times. Like, I've written only a few paragraphs about Megami. I'm already pretty sleepy. And I wish I could do the same for Reggie, but we get nothing about him. I don't know why he fights the way he does, but maybe this is for the best because if Gege gave him any more, he'd probably end up like Angel. Don't let her early otherworldly demeanor mislead you. Nor let the fact that the only reason this arc is even happening is because of her curse technique. At the end of the day, Hana is a goofy girl with a goofy crush. A stupid one at that. She has the literal voice of God telling her not to fall for the Gal Gadot school of acting, and yet she doesn't listen. If it wasn't for Megami, Hana wouldn't even be the woman that she is, the vessel that she is. Something tells me that there could be some parallels drawn between her experiences and Yuji's, but I guess we'll never know. I would ask what happened to Hana, but I know exactly what happened. The Akutami Ray is a dangerous thing. Give a female character one of the best concepts you've ever seen, and then kill her off, or make her important because of her relevance to a man, or do both. The series prides itself by having a diverse set of characters with their own morality and ethics, people who all have their own version of what's right and wrong. Even Sukuna has a moral compass. Yuki, the character with probably the most interesting moral compass and philosophy, dies before we even learn anything about her. The teacher of Todo, the perpetrator of Geto's descent, the missing plasma vessel, the runaway, dies to a curse technique that's used at the same time we find out it exists. Whoops. Megami is not a fascinating character. Everything fascinating about him is told to us instead of shown to us. Everything he does, every decision he makes, is for a woman who we don't even get to see him talk to on screen, and his arc about being a more inauthentic version of himself is done better in other characters. His existence seems to have made 2 other characters terrible as well, but you know, at least he faced the US military off screen, so there's that. What defines a Jujutsu Kaisen fight? I don't know if this arc knows the answer, so I'll try to help it out. A while back I posted that Culling Games has only one good fight, and it was Yuji's. A lot of people disagree with me, saying Yuta's fight was just as good, if not better. Why? Because it's fun! Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, it's not. Second of all, let's pretend that it is for a second. Almost every single Jujutsu Kaisen fight up to this point has been, and these are not my words, just paraphrasing the fans, a battle of wits and morality, a deconstruction of the fighting structure found in the other shonen that JJK is surrounded by. They mean Black Clover. They involve parties that are rich in their depth, their ideology, and their ethics. The fights are also dynamic and extremely well choreographed. Yeah, sure, pal. I'm glad you like Yuji versus the Grasshopper. Let me ask you, where in that is room for fun? Fights where the characters have nothing to say and just exist to flaunt the fact that, yes, JJK's power system is intricate. I applaud Gege for giving us a robust and thorough power system, but can you tell me something about Ryu as a person? What, are you gonna tell me that he's hungry?
I think I'll have you for dessert!
Don't talk with your mouth full!
Another example, what is there to chew on with the two Hikari fights? Almost 300 chapters in and now you want to give me a Panda backstory? For what? He does nothing the rest of the arc. You're telling me I know more about Panda than I do about the sorcerer from the Heian era that wants to kill Sukuna? You have a character that's whole gimmick is luck and chance, and you make it so the more he fights, the more likely it is for him to win? That's not luck or chance, and I get it, it's pachinko, but that doesn't mean the gimmick lends itself well to an actual fight. See, when Jujutsu Kaisen decides to be fun, it decides to forego making characters that are interesting and have something to say, or furthering previous developments for a character in a good way, and instead focuses purely on the spectacle. But wasn't this series a blend of both at one point? Do you guys remember Stars and Stripes vs Shigaraki? Everyone was like, oh wow, this is so stupid. Two of the strongest characters in the series fighting each other? Literally nothing good plot-wise could come from this. Yeah. Tell me, what happens if Sukuna loses? He was built up over 100 chapters, hyped up as being a relic of one of the most prolific eras in Jujutsu sorcery, the most powerful, the most dangerous, and he couldn't even win on his own terms? Wow, what a fraud, etc, etc. But here's a different question. What happens if Gojo dies? Gojo was trapped in the prison realm for only a month or so in the story, but to us, it's been a few years. He didn't get the chance to properly mourn his best friend, his other friends are all dead, his surrogate son has been stripped of his autonomy, and society is in complete disarray, and Gojo has nothing to say about any of that. In fact, it's treated as a joke that Gojo can just wail on Megumi's body no problem. Fights should be better in their context. Some of the best fights in this medium are ones where the build-up to it are just as good, if not better, than the fight itself. And yet, for this fight, we completely skipped that context. 2 months worth of context at that. Why? Just so we can have fun. Well, I'm glad you're having a blast, Akutami. I've said this before, and I can't stress this enough. The ideas this manga presents, these concepts, are inherently human. They're personal. They call attention to how we humans think, how we feel, etc. Death itself is such a tragic experience, but it's even more so when you're not even sure what you or others are dying for. So, in a manga that wants us to think about the many ways us as people react to tragedy, why do we never get to see that tragedy? Why is it always hidden behind symbolism or thinly veiled cultural references, something that somehow make what the story in particular produces okay for so many people? Those same people gas other anime like Mob Psycho or Fullmetal Alchemist, and yet are perfectly fine with ChatGPT plastering ideas and themes on what's essentially the notes app of a manga without any regard for how they should relate to each other. Why is the tragedy of these characters treated like a non-issue after a devastating invisible terrorist attack like Shibuya, or the death of an entire bloodline, or the death of a beloved friend and ally? We just got Gojo versus Sukuna, one of the most anticipated fights of this generation, after receiving one of the most anticipated returns of shonen, and you ask, why must it feel so hollow? Well, the answer is, Jujutsu Kaisen was never interested in how these characters feel. It was interested in telling scenes and telling plot points, not a full story. It worried about the what and not the how. It's a story that has had fast travel on since the first chapter, and people only started realizing it when the man we've wanted to return for more than 3 years dies, and we didn't even get to see how it happened.